After 25 Bond movies and almost 70 years since the first novel, what on earth hasn't been discussed to death in the Bond canon? This might be it. James Bond's only recipe. Scrambled eggs James Bond. You may have seen videos on this before, but not like this. Now, on a long list of strong preferences and personality quirks, Ian Fleming had an absolute preference for scrambled eggs. So much so that he actually writes about a recipe called Scrambled Eggs James Bond in the US editions of his nonfiction travelogue, Thrilling Cities. I'm going to take the classic recipe from the book and I'm going to bring it into the 21st century with plant-based ingredients, just egg and Miyoko's butter. Why are we doing this? Because this is a dish that will kill you if you make a habit of it. Tons of butter, lots of eggs per serving. And remember, Fleming loved this dish. Maybe that's why he died at 56 of his second or third heart attack. I'm not going to send you down that road. 4 people and a dozen eggs. Attaboy. 3 eggs per person, like I said. He wasn't screwing around. We're going to use just egg instead. This is the plant-based egg substitute that is a liquid, scrambles up great. Most importantly, 0 cholesterol in this stuff, and I can promise you it's fantastic. I've made this dish many times back in the day with bird eggs. This comes out better. The other key substitution is the butter. There's like 6 ounces in this dish for those 4 people. That's a little heavy as well, plus the buttered toast. We're going to use Miyoko's butter, plant-based, 0 cholesterol. Okay, 3 eggs per person. That's a little more than a half a cup, half to 2/3 of beaten eggs. Now the thing here is, since we're not beating these, we don't season at that stage. We can do that in the pan we're going to cook in. Pepper to taste, and then salt to taste. Here's your next key trick. This is black Himalayan salt. Black Himalayan salt, which is actually pink, has a strong sulfuric taste to it. That's going to add an egginess to the just egg that really takes it over the line into being really authentic in its flavor. Don't use much of this stuff. I don't know what that is. A pinch? It's quite powerful both in terms of its saltiness and its sulfur taste. Now we're going to add some butter in. Again, as I'm just starting my heat, I'm going to get a nice generous amount. What is that? Teaspoon plus, maybe a little more. This is a butter-heavy dish, as mentioned in the recipe. And that's important to do because it's key to the texture. Now the next key step, get the temperature really low. I'm going to turn on my little gas grill here and take it way down to the point that I'm not even sure it's on. First time out, if you've got a temperature gun, use it. Look for about 230 to 250 on the surface of the pan. It's quite low. This dish should almost be infuriating with how much time it takes to cook these eggs. Now, as soon as you go into the heat, even though it's low, you start stirring and you stir continuously. It's kind of like a risotto in that respect. It's going to become tedious, but it's worth the effort. Now, while I'm doing this, let's talk about the last key ingredient, which is an herb mix. Fine herbe, which is a French mix, not the same as herbes de Provence. I will make my own typically because for whatever reason, I can't find Spice Islands, which had a great mix for many years. So I'll buy my herbs separately and make a mix of equal portions of parsley, tarragon, chervil, and chives. That's your basic mix. 1 part each. Mix those up well. I'm not going to put these in yet because if I do, I risk this getting the green tint of the herbs, and then I've got green eggs, and that's a different author. I'm just going to sit here and stir for a long time while my low heat does its thing. Now, the correct recipe calls for a heavy bottom saucepan and an egg whisk. Because we're using just egg, which already comes out a little loftier and fluffier than bird eggs, I don't need either. You can use your basic non-stick fry pan. I'm using what was this, an 8-inch pan here, and just a spatula. And the spatula is nice because I can continually wipe the sides and keep everything going right in the middle where I want it. Now you can see I'm starting to get my coagulation, as eggs will do, and it's almost too hot. So I'm going to lift it off the heat a little, just keep things low. What you want basically here is a very fine grain of the scramble. That's kind of your main goal until we get a little further and take it one more notch on the butter. Hang tight for that. Okay, now, as the recipe says, when the eggs are slightly more moist than you would like to eat them, kill your heat. It's just a little wetter than I would want. And now, ta-da, add more butter. This is where a heavy bottom pan is very nice. Another, generous teaspoon, because it's going to have some nice heat that it carries while I do this, while the heat is off. And here's where I also add my finard. And I go generous here as well. I don't measure, but better part of a teaspoon for a serving. And I'm going to work that in. You can already smell that tarragon. If you don't like tarragon, which some people don't, this is not the dish for you because it's heavy on the tarragon petal. As anything is, it has tarragon in it. I'll drop the toast. For bread here, I would avoid the instinct to go buy that great artisanal loaf down at your local grocery store, Whole Foods, or wherever. This is a fork and knife dish. And the really good breads tend to have a really sturdy crust, which is really ungainly with fork and knife. I'm using a nice, tender French that is sliced, but without an excessively hearty crust. I think that's important. Now, while that's toasting, I continue to stir my eggs a little longer for about another minute on residual heat. And look how nice that's coming out. Fine grain, moist, but not runny and gross. A nice shine, because Miyoko's butter did a great job being butter. And that's beautiful. I like my toast to have some nice color to it. I'm going to just break it here. As the recipe calls for, serve it in a warmed copper dish. I had this sitting on the toaster, and I've got my toast inside it, so it's ready to go. Of course, butter that up, like we don't have enough butter in this dish already. But a little more is only going to give you a nice flavor base. Oh, what the hell. Can't have too much, right? Not on this dish. This is just a really luxurious dish. And formerly a guilty pleasure, but now not. And then work that nicely on there. And if you'd like, a little more pepper. Now we're almost done, except the recipe also calls for the appropriate alcohol. A pink champagne, Taittinger in this case, is the preferred. This is a good champagne dish because it's such a rich thing to eat. The acid here cuts it nicely. I am told that the only great food champagnes are Dom Perignon, Krug, and Bollinger. Not sure if that's true or not, but this is going to be just fine with a meal.
By the way, avoid the temptation to lard this dish up with lox or bacon.
This is something unique and special. It stands alone just like you see it. Perfect thing for a little midnight snack after you've been at the casinos late, or maybe you just caught a late night screening of No Time to Die. Enjoy scrambled eggs James Bond made the modern way, with less guilt and all the taste.